Chat with Ita and Amanda. This is our February session, and we're very happy to have a special guest today, and this is author Tanya Heaslip. Welcome, Tanya.
Welcome. Hi, good morning, Ita and Amanda. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. I just want to maybe tell how it came about.
Yes.
Yeah, so our colleague Jonathan has put a podcast up of our previous author talks, and I spoke with Tanya in June about her new book. It was then her new book. Actually, Amanda's reading it now, An Alice Girl.
Woo, thank you.
Yes, so, and Jonathan put the podcast up on our channel, so Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, and I sent it to Tanya so she could see what we did with it, and mentioned our book chat and thought she might be interested, and she was. So thank you, Tanya, for coming in and joining us. So book chat with Ita and Amanda is Amanda and Ita. So we're librarians at Tamworth Library, and that's part from Central Northern Regional Libraries. And today we have our regulars, Susan and Peter, who are patrons at the library, and Tanya, who is an author of 2 memoirs and 1 on the way. So it's Alice to Prague, An Alice Girl, and am I allowed to?
Yes.
Title, yeah. So the 3rd one is Beyond Alice, and that comes out in May. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one. So what we normally do, we've already discussed why we read. Do you want to tell us, Tanya, why you read?
I think I read because I'm compelled to read. I feel like there's no other way of being. If I don't read, if I can't read, I feel like there's some part of me that's missing. From the moment I was given Nip and Fluff, Dick and Dora, I don't know if anyone here remembers those little books, but they were the first reader books that I was given on correspondence school and School of the Air, which is how I did my primary schooling on a cattle station in Outback, Australia. And from the minute I laid eyes on those books and discovered how letters became words, which created stories, my imagination was fired and I was hooked. And I have just loved reading ever since. And to me, the greatest joy in the world, there's no greater joy, apart from perhaps a very good glass of wine to accompany, is to just lose myself in the magic of stories.
Yeah, for sure. We find because we couldn't travel, it helped us get out of our, rut sort of thing.
Pure escapism.
Yeah.
To places that you weren't able to physically visit.
But looking at Peter now, where he's at the beach, that looks awesome.
I am very envious.
Yes, for sure. So what have you enjoyed reading lately, Tanya?
Have I enjoyed reading lately? Before I answer that, I have to say I'm delighted to know that backdrop of Peter's is real. I almost wondered whether it was one of those special backdrops you can put up on Zoom. So I thought, how does somebody get so lucky to be sitting there with
They're on holidays.
So well done, Peter. So I was so distracted by that. So what was the question? What am I reading at the moment?
No, what have you finished lately that you really enjoyed?
What have I finished lately that I've really enjoyed? Right. Gosh, where to start? From one extreme to the other, I guess, I have just finished, like the last book I've finished, which I completely loved for pure escapism, was The Thursday Murder Club by a guy called, what's his name, Richard Olson. He's English. And last year during lockdown in the UK, it was the #1 bestseller. And
nice.
it's just this crisp, funny reading of a retirement home, and how these 4 people in the retirement home, all who have really interesting backgrounds, get together every Thursday to try and solve unsolved crimes. And of course the unthinkable
sounds good.
The unthinkable happens and a real murder occurs, and so then it's them against the police, and it's hilarious, and it was just the most fabulous bit of escapism.
So what was the title? Did you hear the title?
It's called The Thursday Murder Club.
Oh, Murder Club.
So that's good to know, because a patron had recommended that to me. So
okay.
I saw a copy on our shelves, and it's sitting at home ready for me to read. So
Oh my goodness, Amanda, if you just want to laugh
yes,
and
Yes.
clever, crisp, page-turning writing, it's just a delight. It's a delight from start to finish. And the main character, this woman called Elizabeth, reminds me of Helen Mirren. And I don't know if any of you ever saw, I can't remember the movie, it was something like Code Red or Red something, where there are all these MI6 spies that come out of retirement, and Helen Mirren is this goddess dressed up. You know, she's got these huge machine guns, but she's wearing stiletto heels, and you know, it's just smart and fabulous. So it reminded me a lot of that. So that was absolute pure escapism. And then the other one I finished, I've come very late to the party on this, but just phenomenal, was Educated by Tara Westover. I think I'm the last person in the world to have read it, not because I didn't want to, but I was finishing my edits for book 3, and that's taken out a lot of the time that I would have had to read. So anyhow, I was blown away by that, because I saw a lot of similarities in my own upbringing. Nothing like hers.
Oh, wow.
Because hers, you know, was savage, but we lived in the outback and kids were there to work. And from the time we could get on a horse and start mustering cattle, then we had to, and there was no chance of not working. And of course, we did get educated thanks to Mum.
Yeah.
You know, correspondence school and school of the air. But if Dad had had his way, I'm sure we would have been in the stock camp full time. So her, you know, what she went through, that book was just absolutely brilliant. And along the similar lines that I also loved, again, bit belatedly, was Where the Crawdads Sing, which was amazing. But as sort of apropos to nothing, Peter's changed his backdrop again, which makes
I know, but now it's not real.
Really at the beach after all. So they're the 3 latest books that I've read, and Honeybee, which of course.
Oh, love Honeybee.
Yeah.
It's funny because these are a lot of the books that we have discussed already, like the Honeybee, Crawdads, the one you just mentioned that you really thought was hilarious. I hadn't heard of that.
The Thursday
Murder Club. So yeah.
Honestly, that's just my pick, because it's been such a tough year for everyone, and to sit down and read something funny, clever, not traumatic, not anything but just a pure delight to read, was gold. It was just like, oh, I can't get enough of this. And I had to read it slowly. I eked out each page. Then when I stopped and started again, I'd reread about 3 chapters, because the chapters are only a couple of pages each. But I couldn't bear to finish it. So I was as slow as I could be.
Yeah, for sure. Educated, I really enjoyed too, but it's quite traumatic.
I think so.
Yeah. It's really horrific what she goes through, but then she comes out the other side, you know, and gets an education.
Yeah. So my childhood was nothing traumatic like hers, but I think a lot of kids that grew up in the bush, or the country for that matter, especially some decades back in especially rural Australia, and they didn't get an education, or much of an education. Their life was just that kind of hard work.
Yeah.
There's certainly similarities there, but gosh, she was made of strong stuff, and
wasn't she?
So gutsy.
Yeah. I actually had a discussion with someone that picked the book off my pick list, and he goes, "But do you think it's real?" And I go, "Yeah, what do you think?" And he goes, "That can't be right. That can't happen now." And I go, "I think it did, but isn't it funny how people have different reactions to books?" Yeah, for sure.
There was a book I also read earlier last year that I have to confess I did not like. I just could not warm to, even though it's won every award imaginable, and that was A Lonely Girl is a Dangerous Thing.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
By Jessica Tu. It's just won, I don't know, a swag of awards. It's cleverly written. She's a very clever author. She's mid-30s. Asian girl, and she talks at length about sort of the Asian ceiling. But it is a very angry book, and it's how she uses sort of sexuality and anger to advance her causes and then to fight against them. And I found it deeply depressing, actually.
Yeah.
And but I think I was in the minority because it's won a lot of awards. And I was on an interview where she was interviewed, and it's fascinating. She's as angry in real life.
Oh, really?
As she is in the book, and she's got some, serious things to say, which were very interesting. And it was a gutsy attempt, but I struggled. I don't know. Has anybody else read it or heard of it?
No, I haven't read it.
But I think that's why I really liked Educated, despite what she had to go through. I didn't find it a depressing read. I found it an inspirational read.
Yeah.
So I'm probably the same. Like, I think if I was to read biographies, I look toward that, like the inspirational story side, not the anger and the...
Yeah. So probably that lady that still had that anger hasn't worked through it yet.
Well, I think she's working through it in her writing. So it was fiction, but she did concede it was largely based on her own life experiences. But the use of sexual, sort of just angry sex and lots of it, and as much of it as these kids could get, mostly through Tinder. And it was their way of sort of reaching out but striking out. And I actually felt really depressed as well, because she said this is life for kids, many kids in their 20s and 30s. This is the reality. And it just felt like there wasn't enough heart. I think I'm like you, Amanda. I think I'm drawn to stories more that have heart or that uplift me. Life is tough enough as it is.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There must be a noise there with Peter and Susan, because I can see you looking. Oh wait, we'll just let Susan. Are you okay there, Susan? I'll just unmute her for a sec. We can't hear you still. You just have to unmute yourself now after.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Okay, all good? Okay, we'll keep going then.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to read something uplifting, Tanya, I've just finished this one, The Funny Thing About Norman Foreman.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of it.
It's a new book, but as it did her debut novel by Julieta Henderson. And it's just adorable. I just really loved it. You wouldn't think so, because it's about a little young boy. He's 11 or 12. He loses his best friend, had an asthma attack. He died, and you think, oh, how is this going to be funny? But he works through it, and he had this plan with his mate to go to the Edinburgh Festival when they're 15 and do a show, because they were the comedy duo. The friend was the funny one, and he was the straight one that would, feed the lines. And then, of course, the boy dies, his friend, and then he changes his plan, and his single mum is then going to help him to get to Edinburgh with another old bloke. And it's like Thelma and Louise, but then with a little boy and his mum. And it's a roller coaster of, it's like you're either crying or laughing, but you can't put it down, and you're really rooting for him. So I just thought it was, I would recommend it to anyone that just wants to read. It is light, but it also has, topics like when a kid dies and how to deal. Yeah, some tough topics, but it's done in a really beautiful way. Yeah. It's
my God, that sounds wonderful.
It is. It's really lovely. We might have to get it for book clubs, I think, because
that's nice. That's really good to know. That might be my next one, because I said to myself, when I finish my edits, and in fact, it's very exciting that we're talking today, because in about 1 hour, my book goes off to print.
Wow.
Yeah, Alan and Unwin are sending it through to the printers, in about an hour. So that's very exciting, and it will be out at the start of May. So I decided that my treat would be, as soon as that was done, I was going to have a good book.
Oh, good.
So that'll be my one. So it's just
I don't know, maybe Amanda will change your mind. This one just came out. It's a 2021 book, so it's
right.
I think it might have been.
Oh, Susan's seen it, read it. You've read it, Susan?
I'll unmute Susan so she can. You just have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I know of it, and everyone's raving about it, so it'll be something I'll read soon. And being published 2021 means I can be able to tick it off the reading list.
That's what I did, because Tanya doesn't know it, but we do a reading challenge every year since last year, and this year Amanda put up
2021 publication.
Yeah. And one of them is also an Australian biography, hence Amanda's reading your and Ellen's girls, so she can
tick that one.
That one off too.
Well done. Thank you, Amanda. Thanks very much.
Okay.
And Peter is a poet, so we've put up read a book of poetry or just one poem. Yes. So yeah, I just read Margaret Atwood's Dearly poems. So it's nice to read out of your comfort zone.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what have you? Oh, yes, Susan.
And on that note, I decided I'd go for the poetry on the list too. And so I asked my poet friend what he'd recommend, and Leonard Cohen. So, and like I always thought, Cohen, man, it's not for me. But I thought, oh well. So I read Book of Longing, and I loved it.
Oh, good.
And then I read The Flame, which was a collection of his memoirs, of anything that wasn't published after he died was put into a book called The Flame, and introduction was by his son. And that was just brilliant. And then I went down a rabbit hole and watched interviews with him, probably about four interviews with people, because I just sort of thought, I really, I just missed Leonard Cohen. I knew he wrote Hallelujah, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And the bit that I find fascinating was that his poems would often then be a song. Like some of his poems would end up being a song. And with my art, I do little greeting cards as little experiments. And then if I like it, then I'll make a bigger artwork of it. And I thought, this is something. Like I just felt connected then that this is something we were, I'm just like Leonard Cohen here. So I was able to tick that off my list.
Cool. So Amanda, is there something you could recommend to Tanya that you've read lately that you really enjoyed?
Yes. So I haven't read very much because I've been swamped with a uni assignment, and Tanya, as a lawyer, you would know how heavy law assignments can be.
You're studying law, Amanda?
Yes,
really?
It's
not too late. It's not too late to escape.
Well, I did escape after school, but I think it's still a bit of a passion of mine, so I started up again.
Well done. It's very brave of you. Good for you.
Yes, thank you. So I tend to kind of read books that I can read quite quickly. So one that I picked up was The Hunted by Gabrielle Bergmosa. And it's a 2021 publication, and it's set in a rural town where the group that live in this rural town have obviously been forgotten, and they've decided to take the law and matters in their own hands.
Ooh.
And they decide that they would like to go on a hunt. But it's not animals that they hunt.
I knew that was coming.
They hunt people that kind of pull up in their little town, and they're city dwellers that pull up in this little town. And yes, so some survive and some don't.
Dear God, is this a horror story?
It sounds it, doesn't it?
It is a bit of a crime thriller. It is a little bit gory, which I actually don't mind a bit of gore. But
We're very different.
yes, it is a real page turner, and it finishes off. You don't give too much away with a hunted person getting away, and it gets turned back around on the people that do the hunt. So I do recommend, if you're after a bit of a thriller and you do like a bit of a gore and you do like a page turner. I finished it in a day.
Oh my God, what's
wow.
it called again, Amanda?
The Hunted.
The Hunted, right?
Yes, yeah. I'm actually I think it would actually make a really good movie. And I think someone could buy the film rights to the book. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Well, gosh, just as an aside then, has anyone seen the movie The Dry?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
It's on my to-wish list because we had Jane Harper, when she wrote The Dry, we had her as a one book, one region book. So we bought copies and put them all over the region, and had a author interview with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of us have read the book, but we haven't seen
Yeah.
it yet.
No.
Yeah.
Susan or Peter, have you seen the movie?
No, the artist and I aren't yet going to the movies. We haven't we don't go to many enclosed spaces yet, so
Right.
But the temptation is
safe.
we've got rain ahead of us for a few days here on holiday, and it's showing at the Laurelton Picture Theatre, and it's very tempting. I really want to go, and I just think, I don't know, maybe if I pick a time when maybe no one else will be there, I could sneak in. I really want to see it because I read the
And
book
put
and
your
loved it.
mask on.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah,
take a mask.
yeah.
Look, it's a great movie. And Eric Banner, Pete, I hope you don't mind this, but honestly, be still my beating heart. It was worth going just to watch Eric Banner stride around in his tight white shirt, which is very unlikely in a country town. And he reminded me a bit of Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy coming out of Pride and Prejudice. So yeah, he is hot, and it's a very clever strategy, I think, having him as the lead. I think David Stratton wrote that he made it, and he definitely did make it. And the characters are great. The film is fantastic, but not a patch on the book.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I don't think so, because they couldn't. I just don't think they could combine the detail of the book into the movie.
Yes.
If you hadn't read the book, you'd think it was sensational, and it is. It's a fabulous movie, but I just don't think you can beat the book.
Wow.
No, I love the book. The book was great.
Yeah.
And the book really has the heat as a character. Yeah, a bit like Chris Hammer does in.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've just got to play.
Scrublands?
Thank you. In Scrublands, both of them have, the heat and the dry as a character, and I just don't think that blistering heat came through in the movie.
Oh, really?
The fact that the countryside is dry, but I didn't, that unbelievably broiling, life-sapping heat, I didn't feel in the movie. But maybe that's because I come from those regions, and maybe somebody from the city might think, well, it's really dry, obviously. It's hot, but it's a great movie. And Susan, put on your mask and go and see it, and then I'll be keen to know what you think. How you
I'm sure I'll love it.
Well, you can't help but love it with Eric Banner in it. Even if it's the book.
Eric Banner doesn't do it for me, sorry.
Well, of course you say that, but Peter's sitting there.
no, she prefers grey-haired poets.
Yeah, I love Eric Banner, although he did give me the creeps in that Dirty John Netflix series that he's...
Yeah.
You like thrillers, creepy things, don't you, Amanda?
I do.
Yes, she
Very much.
does.
So,
Never judge a book by its librarian.
That's true, because last time we had some recommendations from Shirley and Amanda, and I thought, oh yeah, I need to relax a bit. I'll grab the book they were so raving about, The Silent Patient. And I did ask, who would you recommend it to? Because I don't like gory and thrillers and stuff. And anyone, because it's not really a thriller. So I'll show you. I picked this one up, The Silent Patient.
Yeah.
And everybody loves it. And I started reading it and I go, really? This lady shoots her husband and brains come everywhere and blood and gore. And I go, I don't like this, but everyone likes it. So we'll give it 50 pages. And after 50 pages, I was ready to throw it, in the other corner of the room, because I thought I wanted to relax. I didn't want to feel anxious and go into a, psychiatric ward and delve deep. That was absolutely not what I wanted. But if you're in a different frame of mind and you want a thriller and you want, really a psychological, deep delving, then it's probably something. But I go, no, not for me.
But it's very well. Sometimes you can get those thrillers and you start reading them and you think, oh, I know what's going to happen before you get to the end.
I didn't even get to that part.
But this one was so well done. It had me guessing until the last page, and I still had to think to myself, did that really happen?
Right. Yes, Susan?
I read it on your recommendation, Amanda and Shirley, and so I put in a request and got it. And so, of course, you said there's this twist at the end. I was all the way through it. I couldn't get it out of my mind. What is it? What is it? And I was looking out for every red herring and every little thing more than I would with a normal book. And I thought there was a connection between him and her. And I thought maybe, no, wait. No. I thought there might have been brothers and sisters that, one was taken away from the family. That's what I thought it was, but I was completely wrong, of course. And I won't give it away, but it was a page turner. I loved it.
It was a page turner for me for 50 pages, and then I thought, I've tried enough now.
Yeah, I think if you're in the right mind frame, you'll have to go back and
I will,
a read. I gave it to my sister to read over the Christmas holidays, and she said it was a great
everyone's raving about it.
I might have to
try. Sorry?
I think I might have to try that. And speaking of thrillers, apparently there's 2 new books that have just come out or about to come out, both set in the snow, in like way up in the mountains in Europe, and both of them involve people being trapped there and a thriller. And one is written by a girl who was a snowboarder in real life, and I think it's a group of snowboarders trapped there, and then the other one is a group of people invited to a party, a bit Agatha Christie, and apparently they are both gripping thrillers. Has anyone heard about them?
One is called Shiver, so I bought that.
Oh, you're onto it, Amanda.
Yeah, I am, and I'm not sure the other one. I'm not sure about the other one. What that one is.
Is Shiver the snowboarder?
Yeah, I think Shiver's a snowboarder. Yes.
A snowboarder, yeah. The other one, there's a whole group. It's some sort of a reunion, and they all get up there, and one by one, I think they start disappearing. And
might be The Hunted all over again.
Could be. Yes. On a lighter note, though,
It's a Yeti.
Pick Up the Chicken Sisters. That was recommended by Reese Witherspoon's book group. And it was about 2 fried chicken places in a small town in Kentucky.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Of course. Where else would it be?
I know, right?
And of course, the owner of one chicken place cannot go into the other chicken place, and of course they're owned by different families, and one of the girls that owns it decides that she would enter a reality TV show competition to see who, called Food Wars, to see who had the best chicken. And of course the reality TV show would plot the restaurant between restaurant and family against family. Look, I enjoyed it because I really liked the concept of the whole reality TV show and them getting pitted against each other. The characters were unlikable, and particularly the character that was actually called Amanda. She was very, very unlikable.
Yeah, how depressing.
Yeah. But it did end up being a nice story at the end. They kind of all made up and ended up pitting themselves against the reality TV program, and came out on top. So you kind of were rooting for them.
Oh, okay.
And you know, you had to choose which character you liked the best, and you were rooting for one character over another and one restaurant over another.
Yeah, that's funny.
So it was quite funny, actually.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the Ben Elton book. I don't know if anybody read, you know, how Ben Elton wrote a whole series of satirical stories about life issues, and one was about a reality show. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
but
with Julian had it on his staff picks list, and I grabbed it home, but it was quite a thick book, and I never got around to read it because someone had reserved it. So to bring it back to the library.
It was very clever. It was very, and it was all about, it was one of those kind of stories. And I love Ben Elton's style of writing. He's got that satirical flick of the wrist pat, which I think is why I really love the Thursday Murder Club, because it's very much written in a Ben Elton style.
Wow.
That dry satirical humour.
Always when we have these book chats, my to-read list just, goes.
I know, so does
I know. So I'm actually listening to one that Susan was talking about, because Susan's a big fan of Helen Garner.
Oh.
I picked up the Yellow Notebook, the diary, so the early diaries, and I'm listening to it in the car now. And I was talking to Shirley, and she goes, I couldn't get into it because it's so choppy and it's short. And I said, but when you're driving, it's perfect because they're little short things. And it doesn't matter if you then have to really pay attention to the road, because you don't miss much, you don't miss the bit of the story that you really need, because it's just her observations of her life. And she's a good observer, and she writes very clearly, and you're really there with her. Because I know, Tanya, last time when we spoke, you said you really like biographies.
Yes.
So what are some of your favorite ones?
I totally loved The Happiest Man on Earth.
Oh, yes. By Eddie.
How could you not, all praise and honour to that gutsy, courageous Eddie. Oh, my goodness, that puts me on the spot. There are so many. I love Helen Garner. I just think, I do. I just love her eye, her approach, the way she looks at life, the way she looks at things. She's just got this fabulous, I don't know, it's the observer eye.
Yes.
She's a true observer. And I really loved a book that came out not that long ago called, what was it called? Only Happiness Here, In Search of Elizabeth von Einem. And it's written by Gabrielle Carey, who writes a lot of non-fiction, but she also wrote Puberty Blues with Kathy Lett.
Oh, yes. I love Puberty Blues.
Yeah. So Gabrielle Carey's written lots and lots of non-fiction. And this book it's not really but it's sort of a biography. She's tracing this extraordinary Australian writer who grew up in England in the 1850s, where young girls were forced to marry and bear children. And young Elizabeth didn't want a part of this. So at 23, her parents were desperate. They took her on this tour around Europe, and she ended up getting hooked up with a Prussian count. And she sucked it up and she married him, and it was hideous. And she had, a particularly hideous time. She was forced to have lots of children. But what she did was she wrote. And so she defied all the conventions, and she went on to be the most kick-butt girl the 1850s, she had to have all these children, but she was also privileged with the Prussian Count.
Yeah, of course.
So she wrote on the side, and she refused to let anything stop her writing. And she wrote about nature. So she'd go out into these beautiful, German fields and write about the beauty of nature and how she could escape her domestic drudgery and the obligations imposed upon her by this pig of a count. He was a hideous bloke. Anyhow, but in the end, she became this best-selling writer. She ended up supporting the family, for which she got no credit. And then she went on to live this extraordinary life in England way before her time. And Gabrielle Carey very carefully showcases her story with extracts from her books, some of which are autobiographical. And
really?
It's
I've never heard of it.
Only Happiness Here, and then the subtitle is In Search of Elizabeth von Einem. And and Gabrielle Carey, I think it came out sometime last year. So I loved it. It's I wasn't so enamored with Gabrielle's parallel story because she told some of the things that had happened to her, which perhaps it resonated with Elizabeth, but there wasn't a chance to form a basis for them and explore them. So I couldn't connect with her story. Whereas with Elizabeth, this just extraordinary kick-butt kind of girl back then defied convention and wrote 20-odd hugely successful books. That, and seeing how she found moments of happiness in those times and what she did to carve them out. I love that. So it's not a classic biography, but it's as close as it comes.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I quite like reading memoirs, and I always feel like you get to know the person. And then it's really weird because, of course, they don't know you at all, but you feel like you know them. Like when we talked together in June, I thought, oh, yeah, he's Tanya, my friend from... and you didn't know me at all. So, and I really enjoyed your books because for me, the one in Prague was sort of the opposite of what I did because I went from Holland to Australia. And then your one growing up in Alice, for me, that was just like so exotic because I didn't know anything about it. So I'm looking forward to reading about your boarding school adventures because in Holland, no one goes to boarding school that I know of.
No, and quite rightly. Susan and Peter, I don't suppose you had to go through the fires of boarding school, did you, at any stage in your lives?
No.
Public school. Through.
Sorry?
Did you say Peter?
I'm a public school boy and have been all the way through.
Oh, okay, cool.
So what happened in the bush back in the 60s and 70s, once you got to high school, there was no comparable, education possibilities. So bush kids were sent south or east to Queensland or to South Australia, and the government paid parents a subsidy to send the kids away so they'd get an education.
Right.
But of course, what happened is you take these wild, free-spirited bush kids who grew up on the back of a horse in a stock camp, working like little men with big men. You send them, well, for me, it was 1,600 kilometres away from my home back when, and I was 12, and there was no, we had letters and telegrams over the radio. That was it. And all of a sudden we're in a tunic and a school uniform in this big old Victorian style girls-only boarding school, which was about as hideous as you could imagine. But through it, of course, I met these incredible girls, and the boarders, I called them my brave band of boarders, but they became my new family, and we went on to have a huge number of adventures together. And the most amazing thing about writing this book, which I never intended to do, but I got so many people writing in after my first two books saying, the missing puzzle with other boarding school years, please write about them. So I wrote them, but in connection with a whole group of the boarders that I went through back then. And we all got together and shared stories, and then I'd draft chapters and then send to them, and they'd fact check for me. One of them brilliantly had diaries from the 5 years we were together. So they had great memories. So the other amazing thing about it really was reconnecting, like 40 odd years on, all all last together in boarding school, and it was as though it was yesterday, and the memories came flooding back. And the exciting thing, very exciting for me, that it's going to be launched in May, and I'm in Adelaide at the moment.
Oh, good.
And just, yeah, for work. But also I went out to the school yesterday, to the big old hall, which is still standing, Gillingham Hall, and they're going to allow me to have my launch in this old hall.
Oh,
So
wow.
full circle from when I was this anxious little 12-year-old girl from the bush, this feral kid who only knew horses and live and work with stockmen, thrust into this world of tunics and classrooms. And so full circle will have the launch there, and the hall can take about 400 people, or it can take about 700 people. It's enormous. In COVID times, maybe even up to 400. So we should be able to get lots of people in. So yeah, that's
exciting.
Special. It's very exciting.
Yes.
I'm so lucky.
Fantastic. So now you finished your editing. Have you picked up a book yet?
No, because it was just before I came on here. I was doing the last email exchanges with my editor, and she said in 1 hour, okay, this is going to print. So I basically got off the email from her and on to you. So by this afternoon, it should be underway, which is so exciting.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, you should have some choices after today, because we've been talking about lots of different.
Exactly. I wrote them down. I'm going to go down to the shops afterwards. Can you just remind me of the first one, Ita, the gorgeous one?
So it's called The Funny Thing About Norman Foreman, and it is written. Yeah.
Just the name is funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And it's written by Julietta Henderson.
So I've got that. I've got The Hunted, The Silent Patient, Shiver, Chicken Sisters. Just to start with.
Yes. Well, here's another one. This is one I read in one day, and I normally don't do that because I'm addicted to crochet as well. So I need to, make stuff. But it's called The Authenticity Project.
Oh.
And it is by Claire Pooley. And what it says, it's 6 strangers, 1 green notebook, the chance to start being honest. And on the front, it says a clever, uplifting book and a joy to read. And usually when I see that, I have all this expectation and I go, yeah, it's not. But this time it was, and I couldn't put it down. And it was a beautiful Sunday, so I had the hammock out. So I was in my hammock with my book. I only got up to get coffee or tea or a snack, and I just read the whole book in one go. And I felt like binging on Netflix or something, because it is not, I wouldn't say it's a highly literary piece of work, but it's warm. It's it has some hard topics as well that it deals with. But it's like, a combination of the series Friends that used to be on telly, and also maybe Love Actually. So and it wasn't predictable, not the whole way predictable. Little things happen. I go, I didn't see that coming. So it was just enough to keep me going and laying in my hammock, and it was just lovely. Yeah, I didn't have to deal with people that were murdered or people that were hunted. Yes, no brains coming out and guts everywhere. So for me at that time, it was just what I needed. I just needed something to relax. And my husband goes, did you read that whole book? And I felt like I was Reese Witherspoon in that movie, and like, as if it's hard,
That sounds wonderful.
If you're looking, Tanya, for something you can dip in and out of, can I recommend Fire of Joy, which is Clive James' last publication. Collection of 80-odd poems that he could, in his dotage, when he could no longer read, he could actually still say, memorise from learning since he was a boy. And they range over the space of about 150 years of poets, right through to modern poets. It's a fabulous collection, and he narrated a short commentary on each poem to go with each poem for the book. It's a really wonderful collection, and it's sort of, you'll see a lot of poems there you probably learned at school or you've heard before or whatever. And if you haven't, well, then this will update your education. So it's a really wonderful read.
That sounds brilliant. How good, to use that expression, was Clive James's Unreliable Memoirs? Speaking of from
Well, there's
another one to write down.
Series of 5 of them. There were five books in the Unreliable Memoirs was, I think, the last of them. But it's excellent. But his poetry anthologies that he put together, because one of the things he was the poetry critic for the Times, I think. So his anthologies were outstanding. So, but that was his last publication. Well and truly worth it, especially for dipping in and dipping out.
Yeah, sometimes those books are
with commentaries. Yeah,
just what we need.
And how about you, Susan? Have you got any books?
Besides the Leonard Cohen books and Silent Patient, I'm nearly finished this one. I'm just holding it up, but it's Paris Never Leaves You by Ellen Feldman. And I came across this one because we're about to go on holidays.
Yeah.
And my book request hadn't come in on time. So I just walked into the Tamworth Library, grabbed a librarian who wasn't one of you. I don't know who it was, but she was taller than you. And I just said, okay. And I grabbed the book reading list, like the book reading challenge for this year. And I said, okay, this one. So I need a fiction that's about a country I need to visit, which, let's face it, it's France, always France.
Yeah.
and then I just went a few other things. She said, I think I know exactly the book you need to read. And she said, I can recommend it because I've just finished reading it. She grabbed it off the bookshelf. Oh, well, that'll do me. Oh, I've started it just before he left. I've nearly finished it in a few days. And it's really great. So it's about a French Jew, and it jumps from towards the end of the Second World War in Paris to about a decade later when she's working in New York as an editor in a publishing company. And so it goes backwards and forwards. And right from the beginning, it sort of like blows your mind. It's a scene from Jews being treated really appallingly in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the start, and you go, okay, right, fine. I think I've got the message here. And then she's minding a bookshop in Paris for someone who's gone missing. And I can't say too much, but I just read the blurb, so I don't give too much away. But she has an 18-month-old girl, and they're basically starving to death, and someone helps her, and that person becomes very significant, but it's like a secret around that person helping her, because she shouldn't be being helped by that person. So she's when she goes forward, the decade forward, her daughter's in a private school, her mother's educating her, the father got shot in the war, and the teenage girl wants to know, okay, so I'm Jewish, so what does that mean? And she wants to discover more about her Jewishness and her father. But there's always this element in the background of the mother is, will this person appear in my life and destroy everything? That's enough for you for now.
Quite a lot,
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah. Synopsis, Sarah. Synopsis.
So, Peter, have you got a short story about what you're reading
All
at the
right.
moment?
I'll try and fit it in with any time that Sue's actually left me, but I'm reading a wonderful collection of short stories which emanated from the long list for the Liminal Writing Prize from 2019. They're all, because it's from the Liminal Writing Prize, they're all writers who exist outside the mainstream. So that may well be because of their culture, that may well be because of their colour, that may be because of their age, whatever. And it's another dip in and dip out book, but some fabulous writing, and these are all pretty much, as I understand, all young writers. So it bodes well for what we could be ahead in Australian writing in the future. Some wonderfully moving, complex short stories. I'm always attracted to. I'm not a great fan of short stories, but I'm attracted to those that can evolve a great complexity in a short space of time. Maybe because that's why I write poetry. But that's a fabulous little collection. Again, picked it up in the library on the new bookshelf. So I think end of 2020 it came out. It's called Collisions. Looks something like that when it doesn't flicker in and out with the river.
Yeah.
Collision.
Like a great library.
And the rest of the time since the last thing, I've read half a dozen fairly forgettable, fairly ordinary books.
Okay.
Which
I
feel like I've kind of lost a bit of my life, wasted it on reading stuff that was crap. So
yeah. So do you keep reading it then? Because I give it 50 pages at max, and then not for me.
Yeah, I do something similar, but one was on a topic that I was really interested in finding out about, and it just didn't get developed. The big sections in the biography that just weren't developed, but I kept hanging in hoping it would be. Another was there were two collections of poetry which were recommended to me, which were fairly ordinary, but because someone lent me the books, I felt I needed to read them, so I could report back. Generally speaking, and certainly if I picked up anything that Amanda reads, I'd throw it out after 10 pages because I stand it when there's blood dripping down the paper. That's too much for me. I used to read. I read all of the first 12 Stephen King books, but after I got it all out back then when I was younger.
See, do you know that it was recommended to me by my sisters because they were quite a few years older than me, and they went to Peel High and they had to walk because it was only a couple of blocks away, and they'd be like, "We can't walk over water drains," and I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And then they're like, "Well, Stephen King's novel It," and I think I read it a couple of years ago, and I said, "Seriously." This scared you not to walk over frames.
They all smile down here, Georgie.
And they're like, yes. And I went, it was putting me to sleep.
You're a hardcore thriller girl, Amanda.
Isn't she?
I was like, you do realise like clowns can't pop out of water drains. And so I'm not a really big fan of Stephen King novels.
There you go.
Not gory enough for you. I bet he
does. You need gore and guts.
Yeah, I like to be scared.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just like to be entertained.
Amanda, I hope you're going into criminal law, because I think that's probably the path that's going to lead you to those.
Well, I actually did want to be a police officer when I left school.
But if that doesn't work out, try serial killing.
Yes, because she knows all the ways now. We only have 3 minutes left, so I just want to mention that all these books will be put up on our book chat blog eventually. It always takes a while to get all the bits and pieces together, so usually Susan and Peter will send me a list of what we talked about with something short. So if you have time, Tanya, that'd be lovely. Otherwise, we'll just listen to the books that you mentioned and we'll write it up. But if you have time, please send it in.
I can't remember what I told you.
Yeah, I know. I always have to listen to the podcast and go, oh, yeah, that's what we talked about. And I quickly write it down. So Jonathan will put this up as a podcast once he has time. Yeah. So it will be on our YouTube channel. So you can watch it if you want to see us, you can watch it there, or you can listen to it via Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and you can read on our blog, and that's Medium, bookchat.medium.com. Yeah, so all of these are available.
Right. And we'll edit the bit where Peter told me to become a serial killer.
No, No, we will not edit that. We just put the whole lot up.
You'll be hiding in plain sight in a library. They'll never think to look there.
I know. And look at her. Look at her.
Hilarious.
Butter would melt in her mouth. Like,
I know.
That's, yeah, it's always the kind.
isn't it? Isn't it?
Ita and Amanda and Susan and Peter, thank you so much for having me on this morning. This has been a hoot. I've loved it. What better fun than just, apart from reading, than to sit around talking about reading.
I know, that's what we think.
Yeah.
It's always good.
That's
Yeah,
where
we love
the
it.
podcast was developed from, because
Yes.
we would just be sitting at our desk or in the lunchroom chatting about, well, Ita would be chatting because I would never get a word in edgewise
Yes.
about my books. And even the first book chat that we did, one of my colleagues had to tell Ida that she needed to let me talk.
So if you look on our book chat, we introduce ourselves, I actually say, I love chatting about book. Now let's see if Amanda can get a word in. And then Amanda just her bit and goes, if I get a word in, then.
Yeah, so it's been great fun.
Yeah, it's good fun. And it's lovely. We had Susan and Peter from the start. They've been really good advocates and supporters for us. So it's been wonderful. And you're our first author that we invited. So
Thank you so much. Well, libraries, go libraries. Where would we be without them? Well done to you both for setting this up and for your passion in driving it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That's really good. We're actually going to share this concept with other libraries when we have the Readers Services Seminar at New South Wales State Library, because we're just going to do a short presentation on it. So if you don't mind, we might just take a little photo of this and share that with them. Is that okay?
Yep.
Cool.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Okay, we're out of time because we have to go and do our desk just now. So very, very much. We'll put it up.
Nice to meet you, Tanya.
You too,
Yes.
Peter.
Yeah,
And
it's
Susan,
lovely. Thank you all.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for your tips.
Yes.
Yes, I've got another
Yes.
large book list now.
Yes.
Work part-time so I can get to my reading.
Yes.
Yes.
Susie,
Don't
don't
worry.
you say something?
Don't
No, I was
worry,
just
Mandy,
waving
you'll
goodbye.
feel
I
that.
was waving. Okay.
Well, go and enjoy that beach.
I know, so jealous.
Yeah.
And good luck, Tanya, in May with your book launch.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beyond Alice.
Yes,
It's called
Beyond
Beyond
Alice. Looking
Yeah.
forward to that one.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all of you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.